So welcome everybody. I am Catherine Bell with the Awakened Company, and we're all about awakening leadership and organizations to their potential. And I'm with the extraordinary human being today, Karen Radford. Now, Karen is an independent director. She's a business leader. She's currently on the board of the Alberta Children's Hospital Foundation and of Matrix. She's also a mother of 2 boys. I always like to include that, more of the full human being. So Karen wants to lead us through a centering practice right now. Welcome, Karen, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Kath. Thanks for doing this. I know for so many of us that are at home, it's nice to have a little bit of personal development and a reminder about why we do what we do. So thanks for doing these videos for everyone. So I do want to start with a centering practice because somatics is all about the study of the body from the inside. And I know you're going to ask me about that in a second, Kath. But what I want everybody to do, if you can stand up, that's best. If you need to stay sitting in your chair, you can sit in your chair and do this from your own chair. So we're just going to take a few minutes and we're actually going to feel ourselves in our body. You know, so often we only pay attention to what's kind of from our neck up, and society often rewards us either from what's on our neck up or what people see on the outside. And the reality is it's everything on the inside, as you would know from the Awakened Company, that makes all the difference in the world. So I just want you to stand up and feel your feet on the ground. And just allow yourself to root into the earth. So you could almost feel your body dropping, stacking on top of your feet. And then slowly feel like there's a line on the top of your head, pulling your head up towards the sky. And this is our connection from the earth to the divine. And it represents our dignity in the world, the value at which we honor and hold ourselves. That's our length. And you can feel that center line running right up through the middle of your body, up to the sky and down to the earth. You can almost feel your vertebrae stretching apart a little bit from the base of your spine up to your skull. And just enjoy your dignity and your length. And then our width. Our width is the outside of our body. It's our reach. It's how we connect to every living, breathing thing on this earth, whether it's a creepy crawly or a winged one or a four-legged or our best friends or our kids or our partners in life. Our width is how we connect with the world. And you can feel the outside of your ears, your shoulders, the edges of your hips, your ankles. And just allow yourself to breathe into your width. So as you're breathing into your lungs, feel the width of your lungs, the edge of your body. And the width is how we connect through the world. And the third dimension we focus on in centering is our depth. And our depth is what's behind us, what's inside us, and what's in front of us. And to feel your depth, you can almost rock a little bit back and forth on your feet. And what's behind us, feeling your calves, your glutes, your shoulder blades. What lies behind us is all of our ancestry. Everything we've done, everywhere we've been, everything we've seen, everything we've experienced, everything that's brought us right to this moment in time. And what's in front of us is all our desires, our aspirations, our yearnings, everything that can be and will be. And you can feel that space between what has been and what will be, and you can feel your depth. So as we stand here in centering, reconnecting to our body, we can feel our length, our dignity in the world, our width, our connection with every living, breathing thing, and our depth, what has been and what will be. And if you put your fingers just about 3 fingers below your belly button, if you put your hands there, This is your organizing principle. And if you allow it to be your center spot and your length, your width, and your depth, it means that when you step forward from here, you'll be bringing your whole self with you as you move through the world. And as we center today, I'm going to ask you to just reach your hands down towards the earth and to say something in your mind that you're grateful for that comes from the earth. Food, drink, flowers, grass, something you're grateful for. And then as we reach up to the sky, putting your hands up towards the heavens, and we look up into the unknown, and think of something you're grateful for from above. The sun, the heat, the stars, the wind. And as we put our arms out across from us in a T, I want you to think of someone in your life that you're grateful for, that you want to say thank you to. A friend, a family, a cat, a dog, a neighbor. As Richard Strozzi will often say, your best enemy and your worst friend. And then put one hand on your heart and one hand on your stomach and be grateful for yourself and saying thank you. Thank you to this body that's brought us here today. And then Kath, we're ready to talk about somatics if you want.
Thank you, Karen. What a lovely practice that was. Very centering and very grounding and very incorporating as well.
Yeah, it's a beautiful practice, and I have stolen it, and I'll say it out loud, from a man by the name of Richard Strozzi, who, you know, has made his life in doing this work. He's really a pioneer around the world, and I've had a chance to study with him for almost a decade now. And he centers before he does everything. It's just so lovely to be in his presence, and I hope a little bit of him will shine through in, you know, this video and this talk we're doing today.
Mm. So, Karen, what exactly is somatics? Like when you and Richard Strozzi speak about somatics, like what is that? You know, and how does it relate to leadership?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So soma is your body. Soma is your body and everything that makes up your body. And I see Stacy on here right now, and I said earlier to Stacy, it's not whether you're tall or short or fat or skinny. It's what we encompass. You know, this thing we're walking through life with in our body is what our soma is. And somatics is the study of our bodies, of our structures, of our expansions, of our contractions, but it's really from the inside out. So sometimes we think of bodies and we think of what we see in magazines or on Instagram, and there you're looking at bodies from the outside in. And sure, that always plays a purpose in somatics as well, because you can learn a lot about people by looking at the way they're carrying themselves. But somatics is really a study of what's going on in my body, and how does that influence the way that I take care of my dignity, whether it's my length. If I look at expansion, how I connect with the world. If I look at my depth, how do I balance where I've been and everything I've developed in that skill set, but also move forward. So somatics is a study of the cellular structure of our body and how our body is moving and carrying energy. And when you talk about somatics and leadership, for me, you know, we all know from the communication training we've taken that what we say is not what matters. It's how we say it, but even more, it's the way our bodies move that people remember. So if you're a leader and if you're trying to help people move forward and be at their best, or move an organization forward or a team forward, then transparency and trust are absolutely essential. So if I, as an example, had my arms crossed and my legs crossed and I had tension around my face, I said, no, Kath, I totally trust you. I totally believe that that's what's going to happen. And you're my boss. You know, you're not going to believe me because I'm saying one thing, but my body's showing another. And I mean, that's a really simple example. But for me, somatics and leadership is all about how do you be present? How do you show up in life as the best self you can become? And as a leader, I think one of the most important things we can do for others is make sure we're showing up as our best self. So we give others not only permission, but an invitation to do the exact same thing.
Lovely. Now, Karen, is there, like, I'm really into what I call like presence practices, like mini presence practices. Is there a somatics mini presence practice that you'd recommend that leaders do like before they go into a meeting?
Mm.
Before they like, and what have you, because you're an executive, so what have you used in the past that you have found to be particularly effective and helpful? Because immediately that practice puts us into our bodies. So, and we can't always, in the middle of the hallways be doing this, or maybe we can and we're just not. But what mini practices and presence practices have you used with this that would be helpful for others to try on?
Well, okay, I can think of two right away.
Okay.
One is that the length, width, depth we just did, you can do that in 2 minutes or you can do it in 20 minutes. But for me, I also do it every time I walk through a door frame. And that's a gift that a guy by the name of Bob Gordon shared with me. Is he said, Karen, every time you go through a door frame, think of your commitment. I've translated that to every time I walk through a door frame, think of my length, my width, and my depth. And what it does is it brings me back. Like, if you look at it, sometimes our brains get separated from what's going on in our bodies. And
Mhm.
every time I walk through a door frame, if I just go length, width, depth, it just reminds me to feel my body. So I'm showing up a little clearer for whoever it is that I'm meeting on the other side of that door frame. And I guess in a Zoom world, it would be as easy as when it asks you the question of, do you want to connect with your video? When that happens, you could go length, width, depth, just before you got into a Zoom call. That would be one. The second one for me, and I'm sure most people that are on the call or listening to the video will already have this, but I think a daily sitting practice is absolutely essential, to bring yourself to every single day the way that you can be. And that's very much, there's a whole bunch of different sitting practices you can do, whether it's a body scan, whether it's a mantra, whether it's sitting quietly. But for me, it's absolutely essential to have that practice in your day so you have a chance to reconnect with your body and almost say like, good morning, body. What are we going to do today?
Mhm. And so what is part of your sitting practice? You listed a whole bunch of examples, but what do you actually use for your sitting practice?
Yeah, so I have a sitting practice that I do every day, and I do it a minimum of 10 minutes. Some days you can get a 30-minute or 40-minute sitting practice, but for me, I have a tendency of getting myself a little busy by chance every once in a while, but I always do a minimum of a 10-minute sitting practice. And my sitting practice also has, the symbolism of lighting the candle, bringing light to the day. It has chanting with it. So I have a chanting process that I learned a number of years ago, and I just fall into it very quickly when I'm in my sitting practice, especially if I'm having a hard time keeping my mind a little more quiet. I will chant, and I find that's an easier way for me to bring, just to bring my mind to one point instead of being scattered all over the place.
Mhm. Awesome. Now, one of the things that we've been working with a lot of our clients is the whole concept of being very clear on your personal why.
Mhm.
And what I have just observed just from us talking and from one of the courses that you offered was this whole concept of commitment. And I'd love, because I think that'd be really, really helpful for people to hear about. What is that? Why should they have it? What does that mean from your experience? So the commitment.
Okay, I would love to talk about commitments because if you are working with other people, which most of us are in some way, whether it's, in a business community, on a board, even if it's volunteer, there's a number of different people in your space. And the more people that are in your space and that you're working with, the more apt you are to get pulled in different directions. And for me, and once again, I want to give credit to where it's due, which is to the Strozzi Institute, because a lot of this concept around commitment comes from them. And the view is that we're all developing something every single day of our lives. And that if I can get really clear on what it is I am developing, then all the work I do throughout the day will actually be done with that in mind.
Mm.
So I'm going to give you an example, Kath, but the reason I bring it up about we're all working somewhere, some of us sneak Post-it notes somewhere to remind us to do things. Others of us have whiteboards and you can write something on the bottom of your whiteboard. Some of us have books, and on the back page of our book, we write little reminders to ourselves. But wherever it is, we usually have something that reminds us what we're working on. And what I found in big corporate environments where there's a lot of stress and, concern going on, when people are really clear on what it is they're developing themselves, it's easier for them to not to get distracted by maybe some of the fear and the concern or the risk associated with some decisions being made. So what I mean by that is if I had on my whiteboard, and for a couple of years, I had on my whiteboard, make an impact without emotional attachment. Now that, for anyone that knows me, knows that's almost an impossibility for me to have that kind of a commitment. But what it meant for me was, how do I make sure I have an impact without getting too emotionally entangled in what was going on? And so when you have a commitment, and when an individual is working on their own personal development, and maybe they don't get the job they want, or maybe they've been asked to do a project that isn't their favorite, but if they can link it back to their personal commitment, then everything they're doing throughout the day towards that project or that job that might not be their favorite, they're realizing they're working on their own personal development and commitment to being something more in the world, or being something more themselves in the world, or bringing themselves to the world. So I just want to spend a couple more minutes on this, Kath, because I think it's so important that you can have 1 or 2 or 3 commitments, but sometimes we try to have 100. And if you have 100, you actually have none. And I would say if you have 1 and you dedicate to that commitment, and every time you walk through that door frame and you do a length, width, depth, as an example, you also have a chance to say your commitment out loud. It reminds you every day what you are a commitment to. So right now, I am a commitment to continuing my development and sharing what I know. So that means whether I bump into someone walking down the street, or I bump into someone, well, I won't bump into them because I'll be 6 feet apart, but I come within a 6-foot range of someone in a grocery store. If someone's asking me a question, if I can learn something from it, if I keep that in mind, I'm much more curious, because if I'm continuing my own development, when I bump into that person at 6 feet apart, I'm going to be more curious about them. That's going to feed my development. And then if they ask me a question and I'm focused on making sure I share what I know, then it means I'm really going to be sincere when I answer that question, because I'm really going to want to help them and share what I know. So by carrying that commitment with me every day, it changes every single interaction, whether it's with you, whether it's with my partner, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a stranger, whether it's a work colleague, whether it's a board member. If my commitment is to continue my development and share what I know, it will influence all of my actions throughout the day. And then as I go to bed at night and I think of what I'm grateful for in the day, it's easy to go back against my commitment and say, what have I done that has actually helped me fuel my own commitment, which was a commitment I made because it was important to me. I didn't make it because someone told me I should. And that's the first thing on a commitment. If your commitment doesn't feel alive and well, and if it doesn't spark your body, if you can't feel the energy in your body, you're likely carrying someone else's commitment. Maybe somebody told you you should do something. But if you work on your own commitment, it's in service of something greater than yourself. And it could be in service to bringing more humanity to your neighborhood. It could be in service to being a better parent. It could be in service to being healthier. It could be in service to creating companies that care. But you're choosing your commitment based on what's important to you in the world. And by holding on to that commitment, it reminds you that we're just human beings learning and growing every single day. And that maybe I didn't get the job I want, and maybe this isn't the project I truly want to work on, and maybe I don't want to cut the beets, the sweet potatoes, and the squash all in 15 minutes so I can get my family sitting down to dinner. But if I'm doing it in a way that's linked back to my commitment, it reminds me I'm actually doing this for something bigger than myself, because I chose my commitment based on how I could show up more myself and show up and have a greater impact on the world.
Mm. Beautiful. Beautiful. So now, people, I think it was Ram Dass that said, if you think you're awakened, go spend 2 weeks with your family. And now we're all, most of us, not all of us, but most of us are kind of in our homes with our families.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be very curious to learn how what kind of tips you'd recommend for everybody to kind of stay somatically embodied and live the commitment. Any kind of tips, tricks, because it's really, we're going, I absolutely have loved the time that we've had with our family, because we don't normally get it. And it's also ignited, very different aspects of our relationships.
Well, one of the exciting things about somatics is it's all a study of how your body responds to certain situations. And one of the things we can always count on our family for is knowing exactly which buttons to push to trigger us so that we may be reacting more of a conditioned way, not using the best of our heads, our hearts, and our guts, but just reacting. So I'd say that our families are giving us a great opportunity for practice, Kath, because they know exactly what gets our goat or what triggers us, and we get into a habit. So if I always react to one child or one sibling or one parent in a certain way, it's very hard for me to get out of that racket because they're used to me reacting in that way as well. So when I change my behavior, they don't understand. I just changed the rule of the game. If every time my child tells me I'm not doing homework today, and I go, you have to do your homework, and I react a certain way, if I have a sudden change my behavior, they don't know how to change theirs. But anyhow, I digress. But let me go into a couple of tricks. One is that we all have certain ways we react. And the study of somatics is all about how do I become aware of the way that I personally respond or react to things. So how do I gain more awareness on myself? And I think the family can really contribute to that. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas. And then the second piece is an understanding of how I want to respond in a situation, and then developing the practices I need in my life so I'm able to respond in that way. So think of it as an arc. It's awareness. It's then imagining what I want to be from an opening, from a new perspective of how I want to show up in the world. And then there's practices I need every day that help me get there. And I think that we have a little microcosm of many triggers inside, especially if we're living 4 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, as an example. There's a lot of triggers going on, even just to get private space. So let's just think awareness. So 2 things I can think of awareness is some of us get a flash when we get triggered. Some of us freeze. Some of us move towards. But most of us are pretty clear on what our normal conditioned tendency is on how we react. And if we're not, this is a great opportunity to test it out. So every time you feel your emotions, whether it's passion or anger or fear, whatever it might be, when you have those showing up, I would ask yourself, oh, that's interesting. I just moved away from. Is that how I always do it? So when you get that boost of energy or boost of emotion of some kind, it's our bodies telling us this is attracting us in some way, or this is getting our attention. So the first tip I would have is ask yourself, am I reacting? And I would just go for the easy ones. Am I moving towards? Am I moving away? Am I freezing? Or am I disassociating? And by disassociating, what I mean is, am I watching Netflix for 2 hours so I can pretend the world doesn't really exist? Or am I choosing to have a couple of drinks so I can numb my body a little bit? And I'm not saying watching Netflix or having a couple of drinks is a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that a reaction? Are you reacting so you actually don't have to feel your body in some way? I'd say that's disassociating. Other people will actually almost imagine putting themselves somewhere else. Your body's here, but you feel like you're somewhere else. So my first test would be, as you see yourself being triggered by those you love and the most important people in your life, are you freezing? Are you moving towards? Are you moving away? Or are you disassociating? That'd be trick number 1. And then trick number 2 for me would be, once you see that in a while, when you see it, just see if you can stop. Even if you can only stop for the count of 2 to begin with, that's enough. But can you even stop for the count of 2 to get yourself centered so that you can face into the person that's grabbed you? Because that would be a huge step. Imagine that you're like, I'm triggered right now. This is why I'm triggered. And I'm going to face into that person that's triggered me. And I'm actually going to now try to have a discussion in a grounded way. And that, of course, takes a tremendous amount of practice and a lifetime of work, Kath, just for those 2 little examples.
And yet, I love the way you describe them, because it feels like, it's practice. We can begin practicing, and it may not always be perfect, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's all the stories you hear, right, about the perfect monk that teaches, the most beautiful programs, and then you bump into them down the street and they're yelling and screaming at someone. You hear the stories. None of us are perfect, and we all get triggered. There's a great story of an Aikido master, the founder of Aikido, and his students said to him, they said, Master, you seem to be so centered. And he said, oh no, he said, I just get back to center more quickly.
Yeah. So the invitation then is for us to get back to that place that you spoke of, that you guided us through in the beginning, to get back to our Koth, or our middle 2 finger widths below our belly button. That's that center, that holding space.
And
I
I think
I
I
heard.
was I was just say I think the trick is knowing what our normal reaction is. So if I always go towards, if that's how I react, then being aware of it and saying, geez, I wonder what would happen if I just stood still right now instead of moving towards.
Mhm. Yeah, good awareness towards or back or sideways. Um, somebody, this just kind of came in for me, but somebody yesterday was saying women also have an interesting reaction under stress. We network, we nurture under stress. So
Interesting.
is that interesting? So instead, it's like flight, flight, freeze, and there's one more, and then there's this nurture and network. And I thought that was really interesting. I think there is some truth to that in terms of a default. Um, I do think there's a tendency for women to reach out and to nurture. Anyway, so what's one practice that you think every leader should be doing every day?
Well, I really believe that having a commitment and saying your commitment every day will change your life. I mean, it totally has changed my life. My first commitment was to take care of my health and share my courageous voice. I'm a commitment to taking care of my health and sharing my courageous voice. And it changed everything. It changed what time I went to bed. It changed the way I spoke in meetings. It changed what I said and what I was willing to share. It increased my vulnerability. It made me start my sitting practice. It's just that commitment every day and saying it every day and saying it multiple times a day. In my mind, it just reminds you what you're focused on, because there's so many distractions in life. There's so many distractions in life today. You look at our phones, um, you just look at how quickly information is coming in right now. And I think it's easy to forget. It's nobody's fault. It's just sometimes it's easy to forget. And a commitment allows you and asks you to remember. It's really saying, I am a commitment. I remember what I'm here for today.
Beautiful. And out of curiosity, Karen, how many times have you kind of recommitted?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I would say that the commitments that I've had, the majority of them I will hold for life. So I don't believe my first commitment will ever be gone, because sometimes I'll slip on that and I have to come back to it. And, some people have commitments to write a book. People will have commitments to have grace and ease in their life. People will have commitments to find a partner in life. So I think it really depends on the person. I don't change mine very often, Kath. Maybe it's because I'm a slow learner, but I like to stick with things for a while until I can really feel them in my bones.
Beautiful. Are there any other practices right now, aside from commitment, centering, any other key practices that you would like people to walk away with at this time?
I would say feel your feet. Like, we're on Zoom calls a lot, and especially with what's going on right now, and even when we're out of the post-pandemic, the world has changed. There's a lot more electronic communications taking place. And just to feel your feet, it's really easy. We only see each other from the shoulders up on the screen. We're using this part of our body to talk. We're even training ourselves not to use our hands as much because we know it's distracting. So I would say, just if you can, feel your feet on the ground, because you can't be in your head when you're feeling your body. If I'm feeling my elbow on my table now, and I'm feeling my scarf against my neck, my feet on the ground, the back of my thighs on my chair, I have to be right here. I can't be thinking about something that happened yesterday or thinking about something that's going to happen tomorrow. It helps me be right here. And I think feet, even if it means putting a fuzzy blanket under your feet below where you sit on your computer, even that can make a big difference, because you can actually feel that texture under your feet.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much, Karen. It's been really practical and also very useful. So I think it will be really, really, really helpful for people during this time. Now, I just want to open it up to the people in our room to see if there's anybody who has any questions for Karen. Any questions? You can come off mute if you have any questions.
I'm going to believe everybody's working on their commitments, Kath.
And feeling their feet.
And feeling their feet.
And it's really interesting you said feel your feet, because there's been times in the last few weeks where I'm like, I can feel everything except for my feet. So that is a very, very powerful, powerful point, Karen. Well, thank you so much for doing this and for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Kath.
We
Thanks
appreciate
for
it.
everything you're doing. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
See you.